All right, so this is kind of like my review of using chicken tractors for one summer to raise 50 birds. All right, so I'm gonna start this review inside our chicken run. And I wanna do that because even though I've been raising chickens for a long time, kind of on and off for about 20 years, I've never used chicken tractors before this summer. In fact, I've kind of been skeptical about the whole chicken tractor thing since I first heard about it. So why did I decide to try out chicken tractors for the first time? Basically, it just had to do with numbers. This season, I started out with 50 chicks, and that was just way too much for our coop setup. We've got, you know, between like 10 and 20 birds in this coop and run, and that works really well. So there was no way I was gonna add 50 more birds to this setup. So the options were either build a new coop and run, build some kind of monster chicken aviary kind of thing, and I did actually think about that, or start dabbling in chicken tractors. I'm gonna show you a couple on-the-scene episodes of using these chicken tractors to raise baby chicks. One, I think, is recorded at 6 weeks and the other at 10 weeks. And then at the end of the video, I'm gonna go through the pros and cons as I see them from my experience using chicken tractors. All right, so it's first thing in the morning and we're going out to take care of the birds in the chicken tractors. So you just see all the regular stuff. They're about 6 weeks old right now, something like that. So first thing we do is get some food for them and flip our water on so we can change their waters. All right, so the chicken tractors are over in this paddock over here. We kept them down there kind of to keep them away from our sheep, just because sheep like to rub up against stuff and we didn't want them to crush the tractors. And there's kind of two sections, so you gotta check this out. All right, so this section up here, we've been running the tractors and you can see it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of trashed. The grass is kind of trashed from the chickens and everything. All right, now tractor number 2 is a little bit more awkward because we don't have a hanging feeder down there. A hanging feeder is kind of nice because the birds kind of follow it and stay away from the edges of the tractor, but this one works out okay. So it's pretty easy to see where you've been and where you're going with this tractor. So it was right here in this rectangle 2 days ago. Yesterday it was right here, and we moved it over here. We had it up on this kind of little hump here. There's like a little bit of a hill, but if you put it up on the hill, you end up having a little gap on the sides. We had to put it here on this flat ground. So in this area, which we haven't used with this tractor yet, we'll end up moving it all over, but just kind of avoiding this hump.
where it's over. Yeah, they're all trying to get at it today.
Wow.
You gotta like pull them out.
So beginning of the day, they've got a pretty nice fresh reboot, you know, fresh water, food going on, they're all in the grass, free ranging, so to speak, and it seems to work out pretty well, especially for the first half of the day. All right, so that's the morning ritual with the chicken tractors. They'll just chill out there. If it rains, we'd have to flip the tarps over, but they'll just chill out there for the day. Middle of the day, we'll do water, and then later in the day, change the water and give them some more food. All right, it's week 10 of raising these birds. They're getting kind of big. You'll see that. They're just about there. Let me just show you what's going on out here so you can kind of get an update. There have been a few small changes. One tweak is that this big, long, tubular tractor, we just kind of quit using it. It ended up being a hassle to move. Easy to move left and right. You know, you can just kind of slide it one step over. Also, I felt like the square footage was not distributed in a way that was as good as the other tractors. Let me show you the area where the tractors were. So we started them out right here, and you can see, I mean, it's almost like a scorched earth situation. We burned through a lot of grass using these tractors. This area was, we would have the tractor here, and then we'd move it over, move it over. Originally, we started out moving them once a day. Then we started moving them twice a day, and now it's like 2 or 3 times a day, just because they leave some serious turds, and in this chicken tractor situation, they end up laying in the turds. So anyway, we use this area, it's bouncing back. Then we use this area. The trailers weren't here, but we used this full area, went through it once. This grass is a little bit more resilient, so you can still see some of the burned kind of chicken turd areas that are kind of recovering. But anyway, we went through a lot of land. Then we split the tractors up, and one chicken tractor went around through the gate and out into our open field, and it's over there. It's been kind of working through here. And the other one, we went up this little alleyway. We kind of put it here and there, and then up and then over and up and over. We kind of did that. So we got one tractor there, one tractor there. Let me just show you the situation. What's up, Rosie? All right, this is the tractor that's been out in the pasture, and you can see the birds are getting pretty good size. What's up, everybody? They're at the 10-week stage. One thing we did do is we switched to 5-gallon waterers for both tractors. We were using these small waterers, and that just was not at all working because they just drink so much freaking water. I also ended up putting some legitimate hanging feeders in this tractor. That way we got 2 hanging feeders in here and 2 hanging feeders in the other tractor. Without the hanging feeders, it's really hard to move these things, but with them, you can fill them with food, and then the birds kind of like swarm the food, and you can kind of move it, and the birds stay away from the edges. And then this one, to close it, we kind of came up with the system over time of just stabbing a pitchfork in the ground down there to kind of wedge it shut, and then putting a clamp on top. And I think you can see that even though we moved this tractor just a couple hours ago, actually maybe like an hour and a half ago, it's already kind of getting turded out. So the more we move these guys, the better. Now the fact that we've been moving these guys a lot has everything to do with just how many birds we've got in the tractor. We've got 25 birds in each tractor, 24 or 25, we've lost 1 or 2. But that means that in this tractor, we've got about 2.8 square feet, almost 3 square feet per bird. If you look online, you'll see you're recommended to have 2 square feet per bird, but you know, check this out. This is actually pretty small. Melissa and I were talking about this just today. It would be ideal to have 4 tractors for 50 birds. That way they would have 6 square feet per bird. And that's not just because it would be more humane, like giving the birds more room. There would just be less chicken shit in each tractor, and I don't think you'd have to move it quite as often. You can probably move them once a day. All right, let's check out the other tractor. This one's in this paddock. This is the one that came up that road slowly, kind of back and forth, and now it's in here. We've moved it around this area, and now it's kind of moving over this way. Similar deal, I've got a little shovel in the ground here and a tie to keep the door shut. These tarps go either way, so I can flip them over this way or over the other way depending on where the sun is and where the wind is and all that kind of stuff. And these guys have 2 hanging feeders also, kind of cheesy plastic ones that turn out to actually last forever. All right, so now I'm gonna go through the pros and cons in my experience, my point of view with using chicken tractors, but I've gotta tell you right off the bat that I'm not a major fan of the chicken tractor. I haven't become someone who really wants to promote this way of raising chickens. Pro number 1 has gotta be just the fresh grass thing. You know, you've got a bunch of birds, you're moving them around on fresh grass. They're sitting on the ground, they're eating bugs, they're eating grass, they're free ranging sort of in a small situation, as compared to a chicken run where, you know, you've got your birds cruising around, and these guys do go out in free range. I've got a little door over there on the run where they can go out to an annex over there, run around in the grass. But it's just a different situation. These guys are on dry earth. They're kind of looking for food. It's pretty pecked out. There's not a whole lot of bugs and stuff like that. Whereas these guys, when I move them, you know, 2-3 times a day, move them onto fresh grass, there's like a million crickets and bugs and all kinds of stuff for them to feast on. All right, now the other really big pro for me about using these chicken tractors, and it's the reason I did it, it's like the main reason I did it, and it's the main reason I would entertain doing it again. The other main pro is that it just actually made it possible. And what I mean by that is we could not have raised these 50 birds, 25 here, 25 in the other tractor. We could not have raised these birds in our existing coop setup and run. We would have had to have built a bigger infrastructure for the chickens. Instead, I built these guys for like, you know, 30, 40 bucks a piece, and that very simply allowed us to raise them up. All right, another pro about the chicken tractor is that if you're raising birds to eat, you know, you're gonna raise them and slaughter them and put them in the freezer. If you're doing that, at the end, you've got a chicken tractor that doesn't actually take up all that much space. I'm gonna take the tarp off this guy, store it, pull it away somewhere, and it's not like a huge investment in space and infrastructure here on the farm. 2 chicken tractors, they can be stored somewhere, no big deal. If I were to have built a big old new aviary, that thing would just be empty because the chickens would have been raised. And then I'll list this as a pro, and it might sound kind of weird, but I'm just gonna say that it works. You know, chicken tractors actually do work for raising chickens. They've got some problems, and I'm gonna list a lot of those problems that I encountered and some reasons why I might not actually use chicken tractors ever again. But even though they have some problems, they work. You can see I have raised a bunch of chickens in these tractors, 25 here, 25 over there. They're pretty healthy. They've got a little bit of wear on their feathers, and they're a little bit dirtier than I would like, but they have a pretty good activity level. They seem fairly healthy, and they've had a more diverse diet than if they were just sitting on straw. All right, now let me go through some cons of raising these birds in chicken tractors. And before I do that, I think it really depends on what your tractor's like. You can see that the design of my tractor is a little bit different than some of the ones you've probably seen online. It is lower and not as built up. Like a lot of tractors you'll see online will have like a larger wooden frame around the sides. This one has a really simple frame. A nice thing about that build is that it's lighter and easier to move for one person. Like one person can just come up, grab it by the screen, and lift this thing and move it around without too much trouble. It's a design I like, but I think it influences the way I see these pros and cons. All right, the first con, really simple and straightforward, is that this is actually a pain in the ass to move. It seems really simple, like you come out here and you move it, but invariably you've got a chicken leg sticking out one side, you got some chickens sleeping on this side. When you're trying to move it this way, you're banging on the chicken tractor trying to get it to move. It's just not as fun and easy and simple as you might think. Also, you've got to do it multiple times a day unless you want them sitting in their own shit. So if you don't mind your chickens sitting in their own shit, you don't have to move it, but if you want them to be sitting on fresh grass, you got to move this thing multiple times a day, and it's just a bit of a pain in the ass. If you set your chickens up in a run and you've got some straw, that just ends up absorbing the turds and kind of working in equilibrium a lot better than sitting on grass. All right, another con is that we lost a bird in the middle of this process in a windstorm. And you can see that the way this tractor is set up, it's kind of like a sail for the wind. So if the wind comes in here, it'll pick it up. Now this was a serious El Derecho windstorm, like really serious. It moved the tractor 2 or 3 feet this way. 2 chickens got stuck underneath. One actually pulled through and has a little scar on its butt, but it's doing okay. The other one didn't make it. And on the topic of safety, it is very hard to get a really close seal to the ground if you're moving a chicken tractor around. That's just because even though our ground is flat, like we live on a really flat piece of ground, you know, there's some variation. So an animal, a mink especially, could totally get in right now. We spent a bit too much time, I think Melissa would agree, moving these around hills and low spots and stuff just to try to make sure the bottoms were nice and flush to the ground. Another con, and this has a lot to do with my design, is that this is quite low. It's about 4.5 feet. So when you open it up to go in and feed them or grab a bird or change the water or whatever, you know, you're kind of like hunched down in there. It's not a perfect space for moving around. All right, another negative in my point of view regarding chicken tractors has to do with the amount of space they actually require. Now, this is about 3 acres in this back pasture. If you've got like a backyard situation or a smaller area that you're hoping to use your chicken tractor in, it's gonna get turted out really quickly. You know, even this area right here, the chickens were over there yesterday, 1, 2, and then today they've been on these 3 spots, 1, 2, 3. You can see that this is pretty much toast for a while. Even if I rake this out, I'm not gonna want to put the chickens back on this ground right away. And that's just to say that if you're gonna be using a chicken tractor, it was actually a surprise to me that it requires a good amount of space if you want to keep them on really fresh, nice grass. So as you could probably gather, raising these 50 chickens on these 2 chicken tractors was kind of a mixed bag. I mean, the optimist in me thinks that it worked out pretty well. 10 weeks in, we've got healthy birds. We only lost 1 to that freak windstorm, and you know, they're looking pretty good. Weight-wise, health-wise, they are pretty mobile. They're moving around, they're doing pretty well. So, you know, the optimist in me thinks that it worked out pretty well, but every time we're out here moving these chicken tractors and trying to get the birds to move with the tractor and trying not to smash their feet and all that kind of stuff, or every time there's a windstorm or a rainstorm and it's not perfectly dry like a coop would be or perfectly secure, it's not so great. All right, thanks for checking out the video. Hit me with a comment down below if you have, you know, thoughts, questions, agreements, disagreements. I should also mention that I am working on diligently right now plans for my chicken tractors in case you're interested to see how I built these things. All right, I'll see you in the next project.